August predictions. It's going to be a very bad month for the felon. Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for liking, watching, commenting on the videos, sharing the videos, promoting the channel on your social media platforms. I'm deeply, deeply, deeply thankful. All right, so August predictions. We'll get into the predictions, and then we'll throw some cards to clarify a few things. So, first of all, it's going to be a bad, bad month for the felon. Uh, there's going to be lots of fighting in Washington, D.C. Mostly the felon fights with everyone. Uh, the Dems go after Texas for threatening to redistrict. If Texas does it, I think they'll deeply regret it. Uh, Unfortunately, there's going to be more ICE horror stories. So we'll throw cards on that one. Pope Leo is going to speak out against the felon and actually mention Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe not by name, but talk about the felon covering up sex scandals or covering up child sexual abuse scandals in particular. I think we're going to hear something like that. And I think then the felon is going to attack Pope Leo. And this is when it all starts to unravel. I mean, it's already unraveling, but it really starts to unravel. Um, a few months ago, I saw that King Charles was ill. Uh, I think he's actually quite ill. Uh, Weather-wise, unfortunately, there's going to be lots of floods, tornadoes, and particularly in the United States, but not exclusively to the United States, also in India, China, uh, to a lesser extent, um, parts of Indonesia, Thailand, the places around those places. Not tornadoes, floods. Tornadoes pretty exclusive to the United States, and wouldn't be surprised if there's a tornado in like Saskatchewan or Alberta in Canada. I think there's going to be at least one big hurricane. I don't know that it makes landfall, which is good. I don't think it does, but I think there's actually going to be three or four named hurricanes. The big one I don't think makes landfall. Maybe a couple of the smaller ones might, but they just produce tornadoes and lots of rain. It's not super catastrophic, and that'll be along the East Coast in the United States and in the Gulf of Mexico. I do see earthquakes, small ones happening in the Northeast in the United States, very small, like, 3 or 4 on the Richter scale, nothing big, nothing that's going to cause any damage, but just kind of alarm because I'm not used to having earthquakes in these parts of the United States. I do think there are going to be bigger earthquakes in the Pacific and in the Indian Ocean. I think they'll be centered in the oceans. I think there'll be tsunami warnings. I don't think there'll actually be tsunamis, but there will be some scared times. Volcanic activity, lots of volcanic activity. I didn't actually see any eruptions, just volcanic activity that's going to keep people on their toes. Um, the heat waves are going to continue in the United States and in India, Pakistan, even parts of Southern Europe are going to experience much warmer than normal temperatures. This is going to cause a lot of concern. So be aware. Could be brownouts, in particular in Texas and in California. The Texas utility grid's always been on my radar this year. It feels like this might be the month where it finally gives out for a while. So if you're in Texas, I don't know that there's much you can do to prepare for it other than, making sure that you have water on hand, that kind of stuff. Um, I do think we'll get a temporary reprieve in Gaza, but we'll get some relief into there. It's not going to be nearly enough, but some relief will get there. And that's just going to be to appease some people. It's almost um, shameful. But at least some relief gets in. I do think we'll see more Russian officials, well, not officials, at least one Russian official have a mysterious death, possibly with a car bomb. The Epstein stuff just continues and continues and continues. We'll talk about it as necessary, but I've kind of tried to make a concerted effort that I'm only going to bring it up when it's actually necessary. We're not going to cover the minutia of it unless I think it's going to be of use. Um, so MAGA revolts, uh, at least in their words. I don't know that they revolt in their votes, although they'll threaten. We'll take a look at that. And then the felon's health will be in the spotlight as well. So, there'll be incidences of him having episodes where it's clear that his cognitive health isn't up to normality. And there'll be, I think, again, we might see pictures of makeup on his hand and swollen ankles as well. I think they'll do their best to hide it, but and then I also think there might be an image that comes out, possibly, when he's not wearing a suit. So maybe at a golf where it looks like his abdomen is extended, in particular on his right side where your liver and your pancreas is. And I think that might raise some questions as well. So we'll look at that um, as well. Okay, so let's throw cards on the felon fighting with everyone. We'll throw cards on the felon's health in August. We'll throw cards on the Dems fighting Texas, the ICE raids, and MAGA's revolt. And let's start with the ICE raids. This is really hard for me to read on. The stories are just so atrocious um, and shameful. And um, they're affecting everybody, members of this community, in, in particular, have shared emails with me about how things are going on in their neck of the woods. And um, yeah, it's just, if you have the chance, say a little prayer for everyone that is being affected by these ICE raids. A lot of very good and innocent people are being swapped up in them. In fact, almost everyone that's being swapped up in them is good and innocent. So it's just it's shameful. Okay, but let's throw some cards on this. So what do we need to know about the ICE raids in August? So just in August. Of course, we're including the last part of July as well. Yeah, definitely think we'll see some helicopters in the air that look like military helicopters. I don't know if they actually are military helicopters, or if they're helicopters that belong to ICE. Um, if they're military helicopters, that I believe could violate some laws. Um, they're hard at work. I mean, it's super unfortunate. And if one plan doesn't work, try another. They're going to be in the courthouses. They're going to be uh, waiting outside of people's jobs. it's just the way it's going to be. I think most of it will be focused in California and New York, Florida, Texas, but it could happen anywhere. Uh, so if this applies to you, please be careful. I do think we're going to start to hear about how they're funding people that aren't in ICE to play ICE, so to speak. I think that's what a lot of these masks are about. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a whistleblower at some point. I felt that for a while. I don't think it's going to happen for a while, though, which is really disappointing. It'd be great if that happened right away, but I just don't think that's the way it works. A lot of this is because the felon is just out of his mind, cognitively declined, and he can't think of anything other than catchphrases. So, that's, unfortunately, that was a group that was targeted by him during his campaign and during his first presidency. And that's why it's being targeted more and more in this presidency. It's not that he actually cares about immigration reform. He's just can't think of anything else to say, more or less. It's very tragic. Um, we're going to hear more and more emotional stories about, uh, you know, people in the military whose parents get caught up in this, people, American citizens getting swept up in this as well, naturalized citizens getting swept up in this as well. I do think all of those get corrected, the citizens and the naturalized citizens. I don't see anything happening with them. I think most of those get corrected, if not all. At the center of the reading, we have the Queen of Pentacles. And, this is unfortunately, we have a political party whose agenda is so perverse that racism and xenophobia and otherisms, Islamophobia, uh, are a cornerstone of it because that's pretty mild compared to the fact that they're protecting, you know, people who sexually assault children. So it's crazy, but to them this doesn't see they don't see this as extreme. So again, unfortunate, and for entertainment purposes only, as are all readings. I could be right, I could be wrong. This is just a tarot reading. Again, there's something about money here, about the way ICE is spending money, or like the military helping them, which it shouldn't be, um, or like the DEA and ICE coordinating in ways that they're not supposed to, the ATF as well. There's going to be a scandal about money that I feel pretty confident about. I'm not quite sure that it's in August though. Um, there are going to be people rallying around their neighbors and their friends and their family. So expect again large scale responses to these raids. Uh, Unfortunately, they're not going to stop the Five of Pentacles here. There's going to be a lot of people that are swept up in them. And there's going to be a feeling of loss, in particular, those of us that have, lived in this country for decades and know people that are here that probably don't have papers. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We don't know. We don't ask because we don't care. It doesn't matter to most of us whether somebody that's been here for 20 or 30 years has papers, or even for 2 or 3 years. I just don't care. As long as, people aren't hurting other people, I think everyone deserves a shake. But that's my personal thing. So they're going to do this also to try to distract from Epstein. Again, Republicans are so tainted by their priorities right now that they don't even see this as remotely extreme, versus most of the country sees this as a huge loss uh, in the country's values and in the country's morality. I do think a lot of people are going to try to rally around and help their neighbors by, blocking ICE from going down certain streets. Uh, I don't know that it works. And again, most of this is just because the felon is nuts and he can't think of anything else to talk about because he just literally can't grasp words at this point. I do think there's a lot of things going on about money, mismanagement of money, money allocated to other agencies being used for this, other agencies participating in this that aren't supposed to be legally. So, but I don't think that comes forward in August. I think that's more of like a November, December thing. We will hear quite emotional stories of people that get swept up in this. So I wish I could tell you differently, but uh, I tell what I see, whether it's good or bad. Could be a lot of anxiety for a lot of people around this issue. Um, I mean, it causes me anxiety thinking about it. It's so new and it's foreign to those of us that have been in, for those of us that live in the United States, it's foreign. So if you're not in the United States, maybe it doesn't feel that foreign to you because you don't realize that this isn't something that's been going on for a long time. This is just a felon thing. It's shocking everybody, but ultimately it's it's all going to blow up in their face eventually. But unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of victims in the meantime. So yeah, it's hard for me to read on that particular topic. That's why I haven't really read on it. I don't see it getting any better. Okay, let's move to the Dems fighting Texas. Okay, so Texas says they're going to redraw their congressional maps. Gavin Newsom says that if they do that, California will redraw their maps. That's a little trickier, but we'll look at it. And JB Pritzker says Illinois will redraw their maps. That's pretty realistic. Kathy Hochul has said that New York might redraw their maps as well. And I believe Minnesota's also Tim Walz has said that they're open to it if Texas does this. Now, here's the thing about the congressional maps. The blue states actually have more chance of getting rid of red districts than the red states do of getting rid of blue districts. Because a lot of the blue states have laws in place that don't allow them to gerrymander in the way that the red states do. That's part of the reason why I think California is a little bit tricky because there's actually a constitutional amendment saying that, an independent council draws the maps or something along those lines. So I don't think the governor and the state legislatures can just go in and redraw the maps. But at the same time, I don't think any of these maps will hold. I think the court will step in and go, no, we don't redraw the maps every 2 years. We redraw them once. And unless there's a court order because they violate something, we don't redraw them. I think that's ultimately the way this ends. But let's just look. Who wins do the Dems win the redistricting fight? Because I think they do. The Dems win the redistricting fight. Illinois very easily could get 17 Democratic districts and get rid of the 3 Republicans that are there. Texas is going to have a hard time getting rid of more than 2 Democrats. Okay. And again, I don't think anybody redraws the maps unless there's a court order. I mean, they do, but I think the maps get struck down because we can't have this constant new congressional districts every 2 years because there's a new party in power. It's untenable. So Do the Dems win the redistricting fight? Yeah, I see the Ace of Pentacles in the water. I like that sign. Yeah, these messages from Newsom, Pritzker, Hochul, and Walls, and I think that's it. Um, they're pretty aggressive. There really is, other than Texas, there's really not much Republicans can do to make things worse for Democrats. I mean, I guess Kansas could go in there and try to get rid of that. Nebraska could try to get rid of the Omaha district. Um, Florida might be able to squeak out one more Republican seat. But, cities are so big that it's hard to draw continuous maps that aren't democratically controlled. Tennessee was able to do it by splitting Nashville into three separate districts. I still think that might be found to be unconstitutional at some point if Dems keep fighting that. The courts are definitely going to get involved with the Hierophant. They're just going to put a stop to it. They're just going to say, what are you doing? This is not how it's done. You do this once every 10 years. That's the way it works. I think I think this ties the hands of everyone. The courts tie the hands of everybody. I think we return to stability. The districts basically stay the same, with a few exceptions of challenges in the courts, where the courts say redraw this. You know, uh, the Six of Cups. It's about consistency. The next generation, yes, but it's more about we can't be doing this every 2 years. Let's say the Democrats win Texas, which is probably not going to happen, but if they did, then the Democrats redraw Texas, and then 4 years the Republicans win and Republicans redraw Texas. We just can't have it. It's not going to work. It's not tenable. So I think Texas is in for some big surprises because I do think if they move, I do think some blue states move to redraw their maps. But ultimately, I think it's a wash. Um, there's some sabotage here because I think Democrats in Texas already have Republicans on record on why they want to do it. And why they want to do it is to dilute minority votes. And that is the kicker for the courts once they find out the rationale. It's going to be a tough lift for anyone to win the fight because I don't think anything probably gets redrawn. It's what I feel. And we get the star card of protection. So I don't know that the Dems win, but they don't lose. I don't think Texas redraws their maps without the Dems redrawing their maps. And if the courts allow the Texas map, they're going to have to allow the Dem maps, in which case the Dems come out ahead. So I think it's unlikely that anything really happens. They're going to try this, but again, we can't have this much change every 2 years, and that's the protection. I do think that the Democrats in Texas have some pretty good evidence and maybe even some audio of Republicans talking about diluting Black and Hispanic votes. And that really kind of ties their hands, especially in the eyes of the court. Now, no, the federal court that oversees Texas isn't going to find the maps unconstitutional, but the Supreme Court will put a halt to it, is what will probably happen. They'll hear the case and then it'll be decided after the election, but the election will go forward with the current maps. So that's why the Hierophant's here. I think this is going to surprise a lot of people that the Supreme Court won't let states redraw maps just at will. Um, there's some specific instances where this has happened, like in North Carolina when the Supreme Court overruled itself. But again, it was court ordered. So I think it has to be court ordered. I think it's the only way the Supreme Court will go for it. There's lots of burdens around this if it were to go forward. And I think at the end of the day, stability reigns, and there are probably no changes. Now, it might appear there are changes You're just gonna have to wait, trust 6 months, it'll get reversed. It's one of these things. It's just like the North Carolina Supreme Court election where it looked like the Republicans had stolen the seat. And I said, no, no, it'll get reversed. And it took several months, but it got reversed. Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's a fear that they'll be left out in the cold, and I think they just walk away from the idea altogether, I think is what happens. So I think it's a wash. I don't think, and so in that sense, the Dems win. But I think Gavin Newsom is absolutely right. The Dems can't keep this idea of moral superiority, of being respectful of things when Republicans are trying to basically destroy the country. So, yeah. Okay, so MAGA revolts. So, the House shut down early because MAGA was threatening not to vote for a rule unless they got a vote on Epstein. Are they going to let this go, or does this revolt stay? Or is it just in words only? And elected officials that are Republicans cannot be trusted. They just cannot. They haven't proven themselves trustworthy. That's why we don't have to trust them. Same with some Democrats as well, but um, interesting. We get the Six of Wands victory. Maybe they do continue the revolt. Yeah, the spies in the camp, the Page of Swords, the saboteurs, loss, being left out in the cold, the Five of Pentacles. Uh, it's going to be a lot for them to continue this up, though, right? Like it's one thing to say things; it's another thing to start voting things down. Um, it's a little bit tricky. Complete and utter downfall at the center of the reading. I do feel like this is a big change in the MAGA/Republican Party. I think the people that side with the not releasing the Epstein files are in for a rude awakening. Um, I think I forgot to mention this, but on my list, I have it that the public will start to confront congressmen about Epstein, congressmen and women and senators about Epstein. It's on my list over here. The Eight of Swords, they're going to try to trap these MAGA folk into voting for what they want, the way they want. But the Five of Swords being wounded in battle and the Three of Pentacles, circles of support around money, and the Nine of Pentacles, they have everything they need. I think they realize they're not going to get anything more out of the Congress, right? There's not going to be any big bills passed because the election cycle is going to start soon enough. So they're willing to die on the sword, so to speak, and be on the right side of history when it comes to releasing the Epstein documents. So we get victory in the sense of for the people. It's downfall for the Republicans that vote against releasing Epstein stuff, or however you want to word it. Uh, at the same time, this gives the Democrats all the fodder they need to win the House in 26. Republicans will be very wounded in battle, complete and utter downfall, and being completely left out in the cold. The voters aren't going to want anything to do with anybody that even remotely looks like they support Jeffrey Epstein. So while it might start out as a few MAGA people being the saboteurs, they carried the burden long enough that it really traps the Republicans. And then all of a sudden, the people that want the Epstein stuff released, they're the ones that gain circles of support around money and finances. And most of those are Democrats. And maybe 30 or 40 Republicans, but let's see, the felon is here at the King of Pentacles, and we get Temperance. Just interesting. Just the Temperance card always coming up here. It just makes me think that everything comes out after death. Like Temperance is after death. Everything comes out after his death. Um, and what I meant by that, if you're haven't seen some of the readings, I've talked about the Temperance card. The Temperance card follows the Death card in the tarot. Death is number 13, Temperance is number 14. So, yeah. All right. So the felon's going to be fighting with everybody, including, I think, the Pope. Let's take a look at that. I think I want to use this deck. Could you tell us about the felon in August and who he's fighting with? I mean, he's fighting now with Kamala Harris again and Beyonce and Oprah. I mean, there's no end to the crazy. Obama, I mean, none of it makes any sense. People are realizing, by the way, it doesn't make any sense. And no, I don't think there'll be a special prosecutor for the Obama stuff. Or if there is one, it's just for show. All right. The felon fighting with people to know. I think everyone's free game, the Nine of Pentacles, right? I don't think anybody is safe from a tweet from him. I mean, he could start attacking Joe Rogan and Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. It doesn't matter. His brain is so much mush, and he knows he is guilty as sin. And he knows that the DOJ knows that. And he knows because I think the DOJ knows that the Biden DOJ preserved this evidence in foreign countries. Oh, like we read on several weeks ago. So some people ask, well, why didn't the Biden DOJ release the information? I think because they were trying to build criminal cases, right? That's really quite simple. Just like you wouldn't release information on somebody who's on trial, just it would ruin the case. Um, it's the seed's already been planted in his head that everybody's against him. Uh, Death, not surprising. Let's see what it means. We get Elon Musk. I think there'll be more fighting with him too. We get the Queen of Cups at the center of the reading. Um, normally the Queen of Cups is somebody I think is very empathetic, but in this case, it's really coming across as somebody who's just really sorry for themselves. And I think that's the felon. Um, Circles of support around money, the Three of Pentacles, partnerships, pausing and suspending with the Hanged Man, thinking about things from a different perspective, turning on people. He will turn on people. And fiery messages. He thinks everybody's out to get him. He feels completely sorry for himself, and he's not above sending fiery messages to everybody, including the Pope. Now, we'll see about this, but there was a lot of imagery that suggested that he throws some bombs at the Pope after the Pope says something about covering up child sexual abuse scandals. I don't think the Pope mentions Epstein by name, but that's what's implied. Partnerships will break up because he feels sorry for himself, but it kind of all ends in death. So, you know, the seeds have been planted that people like Elon Musk and others are against him. He's just waiting and waiting for somebody to say something so that he can attack them because that's kind of all he has right now. His life is very sad. And unfortunately, we have to live through it. He is going to turn even on the people that supported him financially. It's going to get ugly. People are going to walk away from him. They're going to leave him out in the cold. And just like South Park, I don't know if you all watched the South Park episode. I did make myself watch it. I thought about talking about it a little bit here, and apparently I'm going to. Uh, there's a scene in the South Park episode where the felon gets into bed with Satan. Now, this mimics something from years ago when they had Saddam Hussein get into bed with Satan. Anyhow, Satan basically says he doesn't want to sleep with Donald Trump because he's too evil. Donald Trump is too evil for Satan. So, um, yeah, it was an interesting episode. Not a huge South Park fan, but uh, if you like that kind of stuff, I think you'll find it funny. But it was more just a real serious social commentary of where we're at in this country. Okay, what about the felon's health? I keep seeing more health stories break, more episodes being questioned where his cognitive health comes into question. It looks like he can't stand up straight. It's, he's mixing up names again, which doesn't necessarily mean anything because I mean, I mix up names from time to time, but there's something very off there. We know about the venous insufficiencies. I think there's other issues. Like I said, I've seen him having like what appears to be a stroke. I don't think he's long for the planet, but what's his health like in August? I don't think he goes in August, by the way. I don't see that, but let's see. What's his health like in August? It's in a state of suspension. That makes a lot of sense. He's holding on by a thread, if you wish, right? She's hanging from the like the circus rope gymnast type people. She's hanging from one of those. I'm going to take that as he's hanging on by a thread. He's got a lot of anxiety. He knows that he is physically not well, mentally probably not well, but he definitely knows that this Epstein stuff is bad, bad, bad. Everything's converging to the same thing, the Eight of Wands. What's it converging to? Yeah. I don't think it happens in August, by the way. That's where we're heading. It's in the environment around. At the centers, these guardrails, this was in the same reading with the stroke. They're doing everything they can to keep him going. We might get some messages about his health. Um, Tough choices. There's not really any good choice for them as far as how to treat him. The tower's coming. His health is being torn down bit by bit. And the Two of Cups, which is an interesting card in this position. So he's hanging on by a thread only because they've set up some serious guidelines and medications for him. And who is they? It's a partnership of sorts. I don't know if it's one or more doctors. I think he has a secret doctor and a secret nurse. There are no good choices. They're doing the best they can to preserve his health, but everything's pointing in the same direction. Where is it pointing to? It's pointing to death. It's pointing to the end. It's pointing to his health being destroyed. And in the meantime, we're going to get image or get, well, some of us might get images, but we're going to get messages about his health And we're going to notice that people are very anxious about things that he's saying, including Republicans. And underneath, a lot of this had to do with drug addiction, and partnering with the wrong people. I'm going to take it that way. This is the card I have for Elon Musk, but the body remembers guilt, whether you feel guilty or not. And I think that's exactly what is going on here, is it's this karmic stuff. I also think he's being um, spiritually attacked from the other side by people that he's harmed as well. So I don't think it's long. I really don't. Um, don't normally wish harm on anybody, but in this case, he's harmed so many other people that maybe it might be actually wishing good for the world. That's my take on it, anyhow. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you're interested in a private reading, just shoot me an email, scryingoutloud3@gmail.com. Happy to set that up for you. I'll be back with another video soon. Thank you. Americans become targets overseas. The Strait of Hormuz closed. Flights out of Israel resume. Regime change in Iran. Assassination attempts on Trump's cabinet members. And more suicide bombings. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for liking, watching, commenting on the videos. If you've been promoting the channel on your social media, a huge, huge thank you. And if you've donated money to the channel through Venmo, Buy Me a Coffee, the super thanks. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. And a huge, huge thank you. I have started a Patreon channel where we're going to do videos based on what you guys want to talk about. If you're interested in that, I will link the Patreon link in the description of this video. It's also listed on the channel as well. Um, so we'll do member-led videos, and from time to time, I'll also offer some special discounts for private readings, and I think I might do some tutorials in the future, so look out for announcements on that. All right, so I don't know about you all, but it was an exhausting weekend emotionally and mentally, and it feels like the world is in this sort of limbo place of not really sure uh, can't really picture what the future is. All this uh, I kind of described in on the other channel in some of the videos around the energies around the astrological events and the weeks and stuff like that. So it is definitely a trying time. I do think that we're really close to the peak of the crazy and then things start to get better. So do know that. There was a suicide bombing on Sunday in Syria that killed, I think, 20 some people. This is something I had seen coming. And now that the US has bombed Iran, I think we will see increases in this. We'll look at that with the cards. And they might not even be directly related to, or we might not see the direct link to what the United States and Israel are doing in Iran, but there's a link. There'll always be some sort of link going back to um, these aggressions on Iran. Okay, it's the main airport in Israel has been closed for a while. Flights, will they resume? The felon said he wants regime change in Iran. Is that going to happen? And then when I was scrying, um, I saw two very disturbing themes in the images. One was Americans becoming targets overseas. I think this is just something to be aware of. I don't know that it's something that I would change travel plans about. I probably wouldn't travel to, you know, the Middle East unless you really have to, but that's me personally. I don't necessarily see anything bad happening, but I think most of the targeting is going to happen actually in some European and North African countries and a little bit in the Middle East. So we'll look at that as well. And then the other images I got were people trying to plan some way to assassinate, and there were pictures of Kristi Noem, Marco Rubio, and Tulsi Gabbard. So, are there actual assassination plots being planned? Um, will they be successful? I don't think they'll be successful, but I think they are being planned. So, let's look at that. Let's first start with what do we need to know about the Strait of Hormuz? So, this is the sea passage that goes, between Iran and the United Arab Emirates and Oman and um, the eastern side of uh, the Arabian Peninsula and Iran. So, um, all right. So, will Iran be successful at keeping the strait closed? Some big oil tankers have already turned around. The price of oil, when I checked before I sat down to record this, was up about 2%. Um, that's actually not as big of a swing as you might think. Oil has been kind of on a low. We certainly haven't seen any of those savings in the US because of the corporate greed, but oil's actually been on the lower side of trading lately. Okay, what do we need to know? Will the strait stay closed? I think so. I think Iran's hoping to use this as a bargaining chip to get something. Again, like in the video I posted yesterday, I think the attacks between Israel and Iran, they keep going back and forth. I don't necessarily think the US bombs Iran again. Um, I could be wrong. I'm not always right. I know I've been right a lot of the time. And so I have to admit, I was a little surprised that um, the US bombed Iran. And I think part of it was because, the felon's brain is such mush that I don't know that tapping into his energy is the right way to read what's going on um, with decision making because he's so easily influenced. So, uh, anyhow, so he said something about wanting regime change in Iran. We'll look at that in just a bit. I don't see how that gets accomplished militarily. Now, I do think there's a lot of people in in Iran that wants regime change as well. So yeah, the it's a new financial reality. The strait's going to stay closed for a while. The price of oil is going to go up. Prices of other things as well will go up. Bombshells and surprises in the environment around. Uh, I do think this will take its toll on the smaller Gulf states like Qatar and the UAE. I think that's not good for the felon. I think, if he wants to maintain good relationships with them, uh, there's going to have to be some battle over opening the strait, and I'm not sure how that plays out. And we get the people, there were big protests in New York over the bombings. I suspect there'll be big protests all week and as well as into next weekend. Uh, and they do make a difference. They really do. Um, the felon's defending himself and the environment around. as gas prices go up in the United States, and I think they will, um, we'll throw a card on that here in a second. There's things behind the scenes that we can't see. So I always wondered whether China or Russia would prop up Iran in various ways. And this might be one way that they're doing it is, just making sure that the appropriate things are there to block passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Um, there will be a fight over it eventually. I don't know that it's actually a physical fight. And we get temperance. I think cooler heads kind of prevail at the end. But we do have this spy in the camp, the assassin, I don't like the page of swords appearing here. And we get the Ace of Wands, uh, kind of a fiery new way of doing things. So it's a new financial reality because the strait's closed. There are forces helping to keep it closed that we can't see. And this will lead to something new, some sort of new negotiation around something to open up the strait. I do think heads prevail in the US and in Iran with respect to the US. Now, Iran and Israel is a totally different story. Again, things behind the scenes, and ultimately, we get the people having the say. So, um, now, why the people of Iran might also want a regime change, they are not at all pleased with the United States at the moment, and this is a very dangerous situation. This is, not unusual, but, for my entire lifetime, Iran's been typecast as this horrible state, that is out to cause harm and danger. And I'm not saying that that's not entirely true. What I'm saying is I think that's a little bit misleading. And the people of Iran generally have sided with Western values, like in theory, right? They have to obey what's going on to be safe for themselves. But, I don't think they're any happier. I think they would like a secular country as well, right? So, anyhow, yeah, the bombshell here, I think, is that the people of Iran now are strongly against the United States, probably ruining diplomatic relations for, 50 years, but, that's apparently what the felon's for. Uh, he'll find himself defending himself. I do think we need to be cognizant of the fact that um, there are spies in the camp, so to speak, inside the US government, as well as inside the Iranian government and the Israeli government. And there's going to be a lot of fighting going forward. Um, Now, this could just be diplomatic fighting too. It doesn't necessarily need to be physical. So, closing the strait to be isolating. And we get the magician and stability. And I feel like Iran has everything that they need to keep the strait closed, at least for a while. I think if it goes on too long, something will happen in the sense of, trying to negotiate it reopening. But um, yeah, I think gas prices will go up in the US. Let's throw this card. This seems to be something only, one of the things MAGA cares about. The US is so weird when it comes to things, but the price of gas is one thing that really makes people mad quickly. So hope gas prices go up. Yes, they're going to go up. Um, don't know what they are in our area. Actually, it's been a while since I bought gas, but I don't know. Last time I looked, it was like 270 something a gallon, maybe. So I'd expect it to go over $3. So 30, probably a 10% increase at least. Okay. Will regime change happen in Iran? I don't think it'll happen in the way that the felon wants it to happen. Now, it might happen, but and obviously it'll happen eventually, but I think it's going to happen because of anything the US does. Will the US be able to cause regime change in Iran? I don't think so. Let's see what some of the cards say. No, I mean, we get the King of Wands. The last thing the citizens of Iran want at this point is the US dictating anything for them. That, maybe could have looked differently if we actually had people that thought things through and didn't act like a bunch of numbskulls, but we don't. Uh, I think eventually we move out of the troubled waters with the Six of Swords and the environment around, and this talk kind of settles down. Um, we do get fiery new leadership, but I don't think it's regime change. I think it's just the approach in the world. And, I was somewhat heartened that most of Latin America came out and condemned the bombing, as did some other countries. I think that's what this is about, is it's no longer we're siding with Israel on every single thing, no matter what, for most countries. That time's over. Netanyahu's ruined that time. And so I think that's what this is about more than anything else. There will be fighting, but I think it's mostly diplomatic. The felon's at the center of the reading. I think the felon's really the only one that wants this in the sense of is bringing it up. Because I don't think one could do that without actually going to full scale war. And I don't think anybody really wants that. The felon's just not smart enough to know that. We do get loss in the environment around and the truth. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Fiery messages coming out, being exchanged, barbs back and forth, and we get ill health. So Iranians are very passionate about doing things the way they want them done and not being told how to do them. So the felon is seen as an obstacle in the situation, but he's also seen as very ill as well. The truth does come out eventually about why what happened, how the felon was manipulated, and who really called the shots there. And I think it might surprise us all, but I don't think I think it's a cabinet member, um, and Israel. So eventually we move away from the trouble, but in the meantime, there's a lot of fighting and a lot of loss, and there's a lot of barbs being traded back and forth. So I think it's just a matter of time. Juggling money overseas influences underneath. So I don't think whether there'll be regime change or not is probably a different question, but the US will not be the ones that cause it. If there are, okay, what about these flights out of Israel? People are getting nervous that they can't get out of Israel. Will people be able to leave Israel? Will people be able, just a yes or no? Will people be able to leave Israel? See big backlogs, a lot of manipulation of the system, people paying crazy prices to get out. There'll be a few flights, I think, during daylight hours. We are at the height of daylight, or starting to slow down, but Still lots of daylight. Hmm. We get the full card. We keep going. We get judgment, and then we get the magician. There's a lot of energy around this. So I certainly don't want to scare anybody. Um, Messages coming forward, but it does concern me that there might be some attempts to target domestic airlines coming out of the Middle East and particularly out of Israel. Although I don't think the people targeting them necessarily care where they come out of. I just think it'll be clear that that's where they're coming from. And the Nine of Pentacles. So, I mean, the problem is they can't fly south first because we've got Yemen. I guess you could fly over Egypt, maybe, but even that I think is fraught with some issues. The Knight of Wands, everything is known. That's what the Knight of Pentacles is about. All the flight patterns will be known, the flight logs. People are going to figure out all this stuff. It's a scary situation. It's very much a crossroads. People want out, they can't get out. Get the Page of Swords again in the same position. That's not a good spot for it. We get the Four of Swords also in the same position. So this is like a new reality that we have to be worried about everybody knowing the flight plans, the times, the takeoffs, all that stuff's easily, I mean, you can just check any flight you want. Um, so I think for a while there's going to be a break on flights out of Israel. There already has been, but don't know that it resumes. And if it does, I don't know. Um, it feels a little scary, I'll be honest. So we get the two wands. It's definitely a new way of thinking about things. Again, everything is known, and then people conjuring up some really dark plans. Spies in the camp wanting to send fiery messages. Both the Page and the Knight of Pentacles, fiery messages, and airplanes don't sound like a good combination. Um, and it's to pass judgment on the actions of Israel and the United States. Yeah, messages coming forward, the truth being revealed, and if one plan doesn't work, try another. Lots of deceit and deception. And we get the fourth page too, the Page of Cups. That's all four pages. Um, I'm not entirely sure. I I think the Israeli government's very concerned about flights being shot down. Um, and I think they should be. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, yeah. Okay, more suicide bombings. So there was a suicide bombing Sunday in Syria, the first one since Assad's government had been toppled. So it had been quite a while since there had been a suicide bomber. Will there be more? I keep I keep seeing this image of a suicide bomber, but it's a female suicide bomber. This was a male suicide bomber. Now, the images aren't that I get aren't always that specific, but I feel like there's not just one, but a series of them on the same day. Like it feels like there's like three or four on the same day, and I sure hope I'm wrong. Like, I mean, it's very clear. it feels like, Christian churches will be targets in the Middle East. So the 4-1, yeah, the people need to be very diligent about watching out for things. The Hierophant as well, the church, it feels like it's going to be at churches again. This one in Syria was at a church. Churches seem like the logical way to attack Western civilization. Well, that's not what I really meant to say. That's not what I meant at all. What I meant was to attack, American ideology, that kind of way of thinking. Um, I don't know that this is in the Middle East either. Juggling money overseas affairs. There's certainly lots of sponsors here to make this happen. A lot of burdens to be borne. At the center of the reading is the felon, the King of Pentacles. Why is it going to happen? It's going to happen because of the felon. This is a surprising new beginning. Of course, it's not going to help anything whatsoever. It's going to make things a lot worse, and so let's hope it doesn't happen. But crazy and crazy don't go together to make sane. So this approach of trying to send a message by uh, terrorist attacks, I mean, it's just the history of the world. So people feeling confined and trapped, like they have no other options. This is the only way they can get their voices heard. They've been um, quite radicalized, but they're also kind of not wrong in their way of thinking that their way of life is under attack too. They're not exactly wrong on that. The tower tearing down of structures and the Queen of Wands, that sort of judgment type, prosecutorial type energy of the Queen of Wands in particular. This feels like it happens at churches. I feel like there's a series of them. I hope I'm wrong. I don't usually don't trust things that are super specific most of the time. It's kind of just more bigger, larger themes. So I think you know, will there be more suicide bombings? I think the answer to that is yes. Where they'll be, I'm not entirely sure that they're at churches, but that's what it feels like. Um, are they in the Middle East? I don't think so. I think they're in Europe. So I hope I'm wrong. Underneath, we have the Seven of Cups, illusion and delusion, and giving and receiving of information. And eventually, we get the Six of Swords, heading away from trouble. So things do calm down eventually. Let's hope that these plots get caught and they don't actually happen. It might just be that they catch the plots before they happen. Um, it feels like, France. It feels like it happens in France. Okay. Hope I'm wrong. Really hope I'm wrong. Okay. Americans become targets overseas. Um, Americans become targets overseas. Do Americans become targets overseas? Now, obviously, there's some things we can do about that. We can not wear anything to identify us as American, but as soon as we speak English, it's probably going to be pretty well known. But I think most places are going to be fine. I think, you know, North Africa, France in particular seem like, and of course the Middle East. But most of the Middle Eastern countries will be fine too. Americans become targets overseas. Possibly like Indonesia as well. Muslim majority countries where there's, that potential for these cells to be operating. Yeah, people are going to have to make choices. The Two of Swords. It's a little bit of a gamble to travel right now, the Wheel of Fortune. Now, domestically, it's fine. Going to the UK is fine. Um, Norway, Sweden, those places fine. I think it's just kind of those hot spots. Moving away from trouble, the Six of Swords. So we get the Ten of Pentacles. There's a lot of, it feels like there's going to be a lot put into trying to send a message to the felon, and that might be by attacking American citizens. And this is where things could really spiral out of control. I don't think it does. I don't think there's success in this. I just think that the targeting is there. It's to send a message with the Knight of Pentacles about the toxicity, the mis and disinformation that the felon and his administration are spreading, and the attack on Islam, which isn't entirely accurate, but it's not really that far from the truth with what Israel is doing and with what the felon is doing, and then even with what Prime Minister Modi in India is doing as well. There is an attack on Islam. So we get the Ace of Pentacles. It's a new reality for people in the United States. The Tower in the same position that we had it before. Structures being torn down. Um, the American passport is the structure being torn down here. It's just not as strong as it used to be. It'll get even weaker next year. And it doesn't come with there's not as much safety in international travel. The Hanged Man, people will be putting off trips. I think people know this. So people are going to have to make choices. They know that this is the potential for a way to send a message to the felon. So I think a lot of people are going to put stuff on hold. This is just a new reality that we're going to have to deal with for a while, but eventually it goes away. It goes away when the felon goes away or shortly thereafter. But we have toxicity in the environment around. Traveling to certain parts of the world feels like a gamble. Um, Americans will be a target because it's a way to send a message. It's a way to tear down that structure of American arrogance, so to speak. Yeah, juggling money, overseas travel, logic, consistency, and the world is watching. So I don't know. It's going to be a fraught few months. That's for sure. Okay, so what about assassination attempts on Trump's cabinet? Now, this feels like it comes from inside the US, just to be clear. I worry that some of the law enforcement will start targeting innocent individuals based on their geographical place of birth, even more so than what they're doing now. Will there be more assassination plots on Trump cabinet? Will there be more assassination plots on Trump cabinet? There's already, I think, been a few that haven't been revealed yet. definitely been plots on him that have been unveiled. Yeah, bombshells and surprises. Partnerships, people coming together to try to accomplish this goal, to send a message to the administration. Now, whether it would be successful or not, the answer is, of course, it wouldn't. It would just make things a lot worse. So let's hope it doesn't happen. Uh, the Nine of Pentacles, there are a lot of resources. Uh, they should definitely be on the defensive, defending themselves, guarding themselves. The Seven of Wands at the center of the reading. The people plotting think they're doing this to better the next generation. I don't think that that would actually be what happens. Some unlikely partners with the Lovers card. And everything converges to one point, and the point that it converges to is to try to get the felon out of the government. And then we get, interesting enough, the Magician and the lower left, sometimes my card for Elon Musk. So bombshells and surprises, they're definitely on the defensive. They're well aware that these plots are going on. Um, they're monitoring things like Twitter and other social interaction places. Some unlikely partners coming together to try to carry this out and to send a message. I don't think it's successful, but I do think the plots are there. Partnerships, everything is about removing the felon so that we can return to this Nine of Wands energy about having everything we need, not necessarily everything we want, and thinking about the next generation. Right now, we don't really have everything that we need. The thing that we're missing is security and comfort. So people feel very much left out in the cold, that they don't have a seat at the table, that their voice is not being heard. They feel sabotaged. I think these plots would be from inside MAGA as well, at least the big ones. So um, she would think might open some eyes, but I don't think that they're actually capable at this point. So um, everything does get better as we move towards the end of the summer and into the autumn. So just know that that's what's going to happen. These are probably the next few weeks are probably the most intense. So anyhow, thank you for watching. Love to have you join the Patreon channel. If you're interested, the link will be in the description of this video as well as on the channel's page. I'll be back with another video soon.